As I've listened to the stories of thousands of women of all ages, in all kinds of stages, through the years, I've kept their stories locked in the vault of my heart. I feel as if they've been walking around with me all through these years. They've bothered me. They've prodded me. And sometimes kept me up at night. Ultimately, they've increased my passion to reframe and reimagine the powerful positions of mother and matriarch within the family system. I'm a problem solver, so I set out to find a way to perhaps change the trajectory of this silent and sad scenario about a dynamic yet untapped source of potential and purpose sitting in our homes and churches. It is time to come to the table, Heartlifters, and unleash the power of maternal presence into the world. Welcome to Mothering for the Ages, our 2025 theme here on today's Heartlift. I'm Janelle. I am your guide here on this heartlifting journey. I invite you to grab a pen, a journal, and a cup of something really delicious. May today's conversation give you clarity, courage, and a revived sense of camaraderie. You see, you're not on this journey alone. We are unified as Heartlifters and committed to bringing change into the world, one heart at a time. Hello, Heartlifter, and welcome to today's Heartlift. I'm Janelle, your guide for today's conversation. Did you even know, as my little Nora would have said years ago, that June is National Effective Communications Month? It is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, and National Iced Tea Month. All three of these topics are near and dear to my heart. I'm a tea girl. I'd love to know, what is your favorite flavor of iced tea? Now, I do consider myself an iced tea snob. Yes. I love a really good, dark, freshly brewed English breakfast or breakfast blend iced tea. Dark enough that if the ice melts a bit, it's still pretty strong. I allow myself a glass or two at lunch. But I also love a good blackberry sage, a good ginger peach. What's your favorite? I'd love to know. In our community, we work with a threefold chord, the three heartbeats, a healthy sense of self, which is our identity formation, our value, our worth, and our dignity. We work with our behavior patterns. Why do I do what I do? And then healthy communication skills. Why do I say what I say? How are my nonverbals and my verbals? Well, today we welcome Nadia Williams to the show, and she is going to help us understand that how we talk about human life matters. I consider Nadia a scholar, an academic. Her book, Mothers, Children, and the Body Politic, Ancient Christianity and the Recovery of Human Dignity, as an essential conversation here in our community. Natalie is considered a classics scholar, and she brings insight from the beliefs and practices of the early church about motherhood, raising children, and human life, suggesting there is a way to recapture a vision that affirms the imago Dei in each person above our economic production. In our conversation and in this book, she explores attitudes toward human nature, the family, motherhood, and childhood in the ancient Roman world. She explains ancient Christians' distinctive convictions and practices in antiquity, and she reflects on what we can learn from their high view of human nature, motherhood, and childhood. I love what Eric Miller, professor of history and the humanities at Geneva College, writes about Nadia's book. In this far-seeing, deeply personal book, Nadia Williams offers the gift of intelligent, alert, learned conviction, a beam of light aimed at dark corners of our lives and our world, past and present. She not only exposes us for who we're not, but she also shows us who we might yet become. It's a vision no Christian can afford to miss. Well, we are all about who we might yet become. Over the course of this summer, I'm going to be bringing you conversations that have been in the vault for a while, and they are aimed at helping all three of our heartbeats grow stronger. Our sense of self, which is our identity formation, it is also our intellectual capacity as women in this world and as Judeo-Christian women. I want to have an emotional and a spiritual intelligence that helps me be able to hold really powerful conversations with people all over the world. I think an expansive conversation and language is going to be very necessary in the days to come in advancing the kingdom. And so we're going to be having some really great conversations with really great thinkers. They challenge me. As I tell Nadia, I feel like it would have taken me a year to really prep for this book. It's a real scholarly approach, but I want to be spiritually intelligent. I want to be someone who has an answer. Not all the answers. I will not be able to give all the answers, but I can be informed. There you go. I got to it. And we'll be talking about really healthy, effective communication skills. And we will also just keep having some fun because that's what we like to do here, mix it up. So would you, Heartlifters, welcome Nadia Williams to the show today. Hello, Heartlifters. As I said, we have Nadia with us today. And Nadia, you are going to talk to us about a subject that is so deep. I just told you I needed about a year to process it myself, to even formulate questions and formulate my thoughts, because you are bringing to us an incredible work. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And I was just telling you that on the one hand, deep is a compliment, and I really cherish that. But at the same time, sometimes like deep things need to be broken down into accessible.
Yeah, bites.
Yes.
Exactly. Well, it is deep. Mothers, Children, and the Body Politic, Ancient Christianity and the Recovery of Human Dignity. So it was the subtitle that pounded inside of my heart, because one of the greatest works that I feel like I'm trying to do in my life is to bring the value of human dignity back, especially in mothers and children. I have 2 daughters and a son. My 2 daughters have both just had children and have had this struggle, like yourself, in the very beginning of the book of, do I stay in my job? Do I go home? And so your story starts very early on in the book about your walking away from a tenured position in an academic institution. Nadia, that's a big deal. What led you? What was behind that? If you can maybe speak to women listening that are in that tension, that are having children or they have children and they're feeling this calling, wooing, whatever you want to say, to stay home.
Yeah, I think that's an important question. And a lot of it will depend on individual circumstances.
Of
So when
course.
I first, so I also have 3 children, and the oldest was my dissertation baby. So
Oh
I had
my gosh.
Yeah, so I had a baby right after I defended my dissertation proposal. I still, like, to this day, I don't remember, like, whole chunks of my dissertation. I have no memory of ever writing them. I'm pretty sure I wrote this because there was no chat GPT or anything, and presumably no elves were breaking into my computer to, like, write this
Yes.
serious work of
Thank God there
academic
was no chat.
research.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank God.
exactly. But, the point is, like, yeah, the baby's only uninterrupted chunk of sleep was between like 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. So that's when
Wow.
most of the actual writing got done.
Wow.
Anyway, again, no
Wow.
memory, like it's all wiped clean.
Sure.
Then I got this tenured position and I was in it for 15 years, got to the rank of full professor, like everything. Also, along the way, I came to Christ at age 30, and then also my
Wow.
two
Wow.
younger children were born at that point after I already had tenure. So that's the
Mhm.
joke: dissertation baby, post tenure babies. Um,
Exactly. I love
well,
that.
and there's a 10-year gap in between, and that's what explains the 10-year gap. Uh,
Wow. 10-year gap between the first and the next two?
and the next one, and then the
One.
third one was almost 4 years later. Yeah, so
Okay,
that's
that
how
makes
I
perfect
have
sense. Yes.
So that's how I have a 19-year-old son who's in the military. I have an almost 10-year-old son,
That's so
and then I
funny.
have a daughter who just turned 6.
Oh my goodness. You have your hands full, but how wonderful. Right. Because the
Yes,
6-year-old will
yeah,
just keep you fresh and unconditional love and
exactly.
all that. Yeah.
Plus, she's a girl, so that's like,
Yes.
so we're in the world of like everything is beautiful and everything is
Oh,
pink, and
pink
but
and
also we have
fluffy.
but also we have big feelings, which like I didn't
Oh.
have with the others, like the big feelings. One of
Oh.
her earliest phrases was like, my feelings hurt. It's like, none of my other kids didn't say that.
Wow. She
And
actually
she would
said
verbal
that.
at like 2.
Oh, she's brilliant already. Well, I can't wait
Anyway,
to see her
yeah,
trajectory.
the
That's so fun. My
well, it's all of
feelings
this.
hurt.
Well, like the EQ versus the IQ,
Oh, I
right?
know. I love it. My whole world is mental health and
Yeah. Oh yeah.
emotions. Yeah. So that's so fun
Anyway,
that she's doing that. Yes, I love it.
yeah.
Thank you for that. I love it. So
But with
why? Why did
but
you
with the
make this?
academic, so when I was having these kids in a tenured position, what I learned is in academia, you don't actually really have maternity leave.
Right. Wow.
Um, well, and that's true in a lot of positions.
It is.
I think
Sadly.
people don't realize like FMLA is really unpaid leave. And I mean, we it seemed okay at the time because my university was doing well. I was in a southern university in the south in Georgia,
Mhm.
and it
Mhm.
was doing really well. We had a really wonderful president and provost. They were supportive.
Mm,
I was able to do a lot of things from home. Like I had
lovely.
um, administrative responsibilities for a while that were actually like possible. Like I had so many meetings where I would be on the phone
Mhm.
nursing the baby. It's like, okay, I can do this. But what happened was the really wonderful president that we had at our institution, who actually went to our church, like we knew him really well, a
Wow.
Christian, yeah, at a secular
Wow.
state university, and the university was flourishing. Anyway,
Wow.
he was too good at his job, so the university system of Georgia transferred him to a bigger institution where he's
Of
doing wonderful things now.
course.
So he was
Yes.
stolen from us. Anyway, but
Yes.
um,
Yes.
the next president who was hired was came in during the pandemic, and I think he'd like to blame everything on the pandemic, and he's not even there anymore. He used it
Mhm.
as a stepping stone to something
Mhm.
else, but
Yeah.
he completely gutted the university.
Oh,
So a lot of people left. My department had 24 full-time faculty in 2020. By the time I left, I think we had 11.
wow. Yeah,
So
this is such
like
a peek into the world of academia during the pandemic. I haven't.
But it's not just the pandemic. I
Oh,
don't
no,
think it
no.
was the
Sure.
pandemic. It
Right.
just happened to coincide. But
Correct. Yeah.
leadership matters, and
Mhm,
really
it does.
terrible leadership makes more difference than we think. And that's how
What
here I
department were
was.
you in? What were you teaching? What department were you in? I'm just really
I
would
was
love
in
to have that.
history,
History. Okay. Yes, that's
but
your bent
um,
for sure.
but that's the thing. Like at that point, suddenly, like all these things, all these years that I thought like I have the perfect job for family. We were homeschooling all along. Like, sure, I never
Wow.
slept, um,
While you were
but
teaching.
Oh yeah. Well,
at that level.
my
Okay.
husband was also a professor there in my department. We
Okay.
worked really hard as a team to make
Mhm.
everything possible.
Love it.
Uh, when things became so awful at work, this is
Mm.
when, like, you always hear that adage, like, your work doesn't love you back. But
Mm.
for a while, it kind of felt like it did.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
but
Until it
at that
didn't.
point, until it didn't, and that's when I
Mhm.
realized, like, you know what? I can't just walk away. Like, I can.
Right. That's a
So I did.
huge, huge, brave, courageous step, though, no? I think
Well,
so.
it did at that point, it did not feel brave. It just felt
Uh-huh.
like the right thing to do.
Okay, I love it. I love it.
You
You
get to
knew
a
that.
point.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and like you work on mental health and
Mhm.
you've I'm sure you've seen plenty of
Mhm.
people in like toxic job environments.
Oh, yes, for
And
sure.
like there's a point where you get to a point
Mhm.
where you say like the only like the
Yeah.
best thing I can do
Is leave.
is
Mhm.
leave.
That's
And
right.
so, yeah.
But in that leaving, what led you because, this book is just, one I really wanna take my time with, as I said, because I'm underlining every sentence and I'm not understanding a lot because I'm not a history researcher. And so I take a very practical theological approach to the New Testament, where you are taking a scholarly approach. And that's why I love having you here because I want to be more intelligent in my faith. And I want my community to be as well, especially now as a grandmother in the world that I'm living in. I homeschooled as well. And one of the things I say here all the time was I definitely homeschooled and was very evangelical in that world and am not there anymore. And so I want to be able to have a ready answer, an intelligent, well informed answer, and to be able to talk to my grandchildren in an even more expansive way. So I wanted you here to help us do that. And so there are several aspects of the book, but why did you feel called, perhaps, to do this book, to do this work now in this time?
So the final straw was the moment when I realized like I have to write this was
Yeah.
when I read this article that I mentioned in the introduction, the
Mhm.
Bloomberg piece that says something like women who don't get married and who don't have children are happier, like are wealthier. So like
Yeah.
all the things
Unbelievable.
you're gonna have more money, and by implication, they really connected openly. Like you will have more like
Wealth.
happiness,
Hmm.
yeah, wealth, but also like
And
happiness. Your life
flourishing,
will
like
be
you,
better.
yeah, you
Yeah,
write about flourishing, which I love.
exactly.
Yes.
So your life will be better. Let's like just sum it all up. The Bloomberg
Unbelievable.
thesis, your life as a woman will be better if you never have kids. And there was the implied, like, don't get married either. That's just not good for you. So
Wow.
I read
Wow.
that and
Oh,
I was really like angry because
yes.
also it was so easily debunked. Like Brad Wilcox has published so much research, like actual numbers. For those of you who care about numbers, like if
Yeah.
you're asking, like, where are the stats, ma'am? Like,
Yes.
it's like
Show me
we
the
have the
stats.
numbers. We
Yes.
have the
And you
numbers.
give us a lot of those in this book, which is
Yes,
you've
I
done the
include
work
them.
for us. Yes. Which I
Well,
appreciate.
again, like other people who actually like this is where social scientists are such a
Mhm.
blessing to us, and
Yeah.
especially social scientists who do all those numbers
Yes.
and then break it down to people like me who does not understand numbers or
Yes.
survey research or anything. But anyway,
Mhm.
so like Brad Wilcox, Tim Carney, like all those people who have done those numbers and show that actually married people in America are a lot happier,
Mhm.
and mothers with well, obviously mothers have kids, but married mothers with kids
Married
are a lot.
mothers.
Married mothers are doing a lot better than others. And the problem
Mm.
with that particular Bloomberg article was that it was not differentiating between categories. I think we can all agree that
Mm.
single moms in poverty are struggling.
I would
But
say
that's the
so.
point. Like,
Mhm.
that's the point. We're not talking. That's not what we're talking about. You
Mhm.
cannot look at a mother in a crisis situation and
Mm.
then make a conclusion for the rest of the population and say,
Yeah.
having kids is just terrible for you, like for your wealth, for your happiness, for your flourishing. It's like, no, that's not
Yeah.
what we're talking about. And the
Right.
Bloomberg article, I mean, that was basically like shoddy research, but I think it was also malicious. It
It
really
sounds
was.
malicious, yes, for sure.
It
And I will
really,
get it and read it. I have not done that yet, but you give us
yeah,
a synopsis of it for sure. Yes.
it was really awful. But what struck me when I read it was the thought, wait a second, I've seen this before. And in fact, if you Google, like there are so many, it's a whole genre of articles, like hit pieces on motherhood, on marriage, and
Mhm.
on family. Like in modern America, it has
Mhm.
become very fashionable to attack mothers and just
It's
say, like, what are you doing? And in the
That's why
past
you're
year,
here. This
especially,
is why I
yeah,
wanted.
I mean,
Why are we doing
this
this
is
though?
why, yeah,
Why?
like,
Yes.
well, and this is something that was really striking during the presidential campaign season,
So
because
striking.
one of the few things that both sides, candidates on both sides could agree on was that stay-at-home moms are bad for the GDP. It's like, well, thanks for telling me that I'm like wrecking the economy by raising my children. Like, don't mind me over here.
Yeah.
Uh, but this is such a myopic argument. But it
Mm,
gets to a bigger point
mm.
where we want to sum up everything that any person does from birth to death in economic terms.
Yes, that's what you say over. I have it written down so many times. What's the best economic footing? What is the price tag on a human life? That's what struck me particularly
Yeah.
was as a stay-at-home mom back in the day, and even now at
Mhm,
65, I am, getting the Social Security spectrum of how much money, and you can see the
mhm,
deficit of that
mhm.
that I
Yeah.
stayed home, right?
Mhm.
It's
Oh,
right
yeah.
there. It's right there. So if you don't personally, personally know and have the human dignity and value of what I did by staying home instead of, going out into the world
Mhm,
and making more money, it's sobering. And that's why I wanted you here because I feel like because there's such an attack on, I mean, I'm living it with my two daughters and my daughter-in-law. I'm
yeah.
living it. They're all staying home. My twin daughter just had her first, and had spent 10 years building a career. And
Mhm,
it was a really heart-wrenching decision as like you knew this is not right anymore. I'm moving on. And
mhm,
so I have said to her, you really won't ever regret this. Yet the messages,
mhm,
right? And you have to be prepared for down the road when you
yeah.
get your Social Security and go, oh, okay.
Mhm.
Well, I really wasn't worth quite a lot, right? So is it all coming into fruition that how do we now then bring forth what you're trying to tell us is not have a price tag on a human life like that? Like, what do we do?
So this is where I keep saying over the last few years that like any big questions are really theological questions
Love that.
that require
Yes.
theological answers. And I think this is
Mhm.
where we're getting at. So, all of
Mhm.
these negative messages about motherhood have
Mhm.
parallels in pre Christian pagan world,
I
where there
want
was
you.
also
Yes.
a devaluing of women and devaluing of mothers. Like, you're
Mhm.
only worth something if you're doing something for the state.
Which was
Um,
really mind-blowing to me that it was
mhm.
present in that day and
Oh,
time.
yeah.
So that's
It
your
looked
area of
different,
it looked different, but the principles were the
but it was
same and
there.
it was there. And
Yes.
so tell us, I want to know
Mhm.
that's your expertise. I want to hear what you have to say about that. It's so important.
So, for example, when you look at someone like Aristotle, who talks about women as a mutilated male or an imperfect male, you have this idea of like, what can women do? Well, so it's actually a defect that women can bear
Mhm.
children.
Mm.
And there's a
Wow.
whole like strand of literature running through uh, ancient Greek world and into the Roman world, explaining how women are a curse on men and are a curse on society, are
Wow.
intellectually lightweight, cannot be trusted. There was a whole tradition that it was actually women who were sexually like overzealous and not men, but it was
Mhm.
women who would be a problem in that regard,
Wow.
and so on and so forth. historians, consider that it may have been a tongue-in-cheek story, but in Aeschylus's trilogy, the Oresteia, in the final play in the trilogy, there's a murder trial, and the whole question hinges on whether the character who is accused of killing his mother to avenge his father's death, that's a dysfunctional family situation,
Certainly.
whether he was guilty of murder for killing his mother.
Mm.
And the goddess Athena comes to his defense, effectively. Well, actually, Apollo. So Apollo and Athena collaborate on his defense.
Wow.
And the crux of the matter is, in Apollo's argument, that mothers are not actually like the parents of their children. They're just the incubator. Only the father
Ah,
creates new life. The mother is a
right.
vessel, an incubator. Like think of
Right.
a vase, that holds
Yes.
water or something.
Hmm.
And that's
She's a
all that a mother
conduit,
does.
basically. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the goddess Athena is an illustration of how that works because she does not have a mother. She was born out of Zeus's head, fully formed. So there you have it, this
There you have it.
mythological
Hmm.
explanation that only fathers are true parents of their children. Mothers just kind of carried them along like a
Hmm.
supermarket bag. They brought them
Hmm.
home. That's great. You've served your duty. Goodbye. And
Right.
so this
But these
character is
myths
acquitted.
served a real they were, I mean, we can see
Oh
that
yeah.
in scripture, they
Mhm.
bring in. So these myths were more than myths in
Oh
that day
yeah.
and time, for
Well,
sure.
that's the thing. Like any myths, any stories we tell,
Mm-hmm.
any folklore has roots in
Hmm.
values. It
Right.
reflects values and it continues perpetuating them in the long run. And
Hmm.
so that's what we're seeing here. We see true misogyny baked into consciousness in the ancient pre-Christian world. And
Wow.
then you have Jesus coming along and saying, like, everybody is my beloved son and daughter.
I know. I know.
Like, mic drop.
Mic drop. Yes. Which I think is so phenomenal. And I have definitely talked a lot about it, written a lot about it myself,
Mhm.
and how Jesus, it was my master's thesis, how he really came to empower women,
Mhm.
right? Did he
But what does
not?
it look well, what does it mean to so, like, when we say
Yeah, yeah,
today,
yeah.
"He came to empower women,"
Yeah,
it
yeah,
means
yeah.
something
Okay.
like, it might mean something, like, different.
Different.
So,
Right.
really, what he came to do was to tell everybody, like, men and women alike, but the reason that it seems like empowering women because they didn't have that message before. If
Yeah.
you have Aristotle being pounded into your head, "You are an imperfect male," and
Yes.
then you have
Yes.
somebody who says, "Everybody is made in God's image."
Right. Life
Like, what
altering, radical,
Yeah,
totally radical. Right.
yeah,
So I'm going
and
to perceive that as he empowered me and gave me a voice. That's how I'm going to use the
exactly.
words here in the
Mhm.
21st century. But what did that really mean? Help us understand that.
So, what it meant was seeing human dignity without putting a price tag on it, without doing
Hmm.
that thing that we're still tempted to do today. And so
Yeah.
that's where I thought it was really striking. So, when I first started looking at, like, how did Jesus, like, if we want to talk about pro life ministry, and I think we can agree that Jesus's ministry was very much a profoundly pro life ministry.
Very
But what
much.
does that mean? So,
Hmm.
today, when you say pro life ministry, you're thinking,
Hmm.
like, okay, let's go demonstrate in front of
Hmm.
abortion clinics or something. Like,
Yeah.
let's advocate for protecting women in crisis pregnancies. Let's
Hmm.
protect the unborn. And
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Like, we should be doing this.
Hmm.
Protecting the unborn is wonderful. Supporting mothers in crisis situations is wonderful. But when we have this view of pro life ministry, it's too narrow. What does
Yes.
it mean to be not just pro life, but pro human flourishing? And that's where
Yes.
Jesus has such an incredible story for us.
Hmm.
Because if you look at the Gospels, what did Jesus's ministry look like? We don't see him ever interacting with women in crisis pregnancies, although you could argue that Mary was one.
Yep.
So I guess there is that one.
Hmm.
But what does his pro life ministry look like? It looks like
Hmm.
endless conversations with single women in
Mm.
crisis,
I
the
just love
ones
how
who
you
were
say this.
invisible.
The ones who were invisible, and you say useless.
Yes, useless.
The word useless hit me hard, and you have a whole chapter on the
Mm.
redemption of
Yeah.
useless people.
Mhm.
Because maybe in my day we would have called them, what did we say? Unlovely?
Mm.
I think that's what it was.
That's so insidious.
Isn't it? Oh,
Mm.
I know.
It
So
sounds
sorry.
subtle, but then you think about it, it's like, oh, yeah,
Unlovely. I know that's what
unlovely.
I know that's what we called them.
Oh. Because that has an implication of beauty also, like what
Oh,
you're
of
doing is not
course.
beautiful.
Of
So,
course.
when you
Yes.
think of like the good, the true, and the beautiful, and unlovely basically
Yes.
says that you're the opposite of that. Ooh,
I know. But
ugh,
you're
I'm sorry.
okay. I know.
Yeah. Mm.
I know. There's a lot to be sorry for.
Yeah.
I
Oh.
know there is. And I have definitely said I'm sorry. But this idea of and I think I would maybe also say just invisible people that are
Mhm.
invisible. We could even
Yeah.
call them wallflower people or disabled, right? And any of those things,
Well, yeah, that falls
right?
into that category.
That falls into that category. And certainly history has not been kind to useless people. And even in modern day, my
Yeah.
daughter spent a lot of time in India, my older daughter,
Mm.
and she spent some time with an NGO. And uh, if you're disabled, you're on a
Mm.
cot in a bed.
Mm.
And I think that defines useless.
Yeah.
It really ripped her heart apart. It's like, how is that? How is that happening today?
Mhm.
But it is. And I think,
Yeah.
I live in a very privileged world, I think.
Mhm.
I can use that word. I don't know.
Mhm.
But that is not. There are a lot of parts of the world that are, and I've been to them. So
Mhm.
I think what you're saying to us is Christ came, he saw every
Yes.
person, right?
And that's
Okay.
seeing the
That's
invisible
seeing.
ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's big.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily think about how revolutionary it is
Mm-hmm.
for the
Yeah.
invisible to be seen.
You are changing my mind, my worldview. It's very thing. That's why I wanted you here because you're helping me inform even the ways that I would have used the word empower.
Mhm.
Okay, because it's not
Well,
the right
we have
word.
connotations. We have
We do.
connotations with it today,
Yeah.
but um, it is empower, but it's in a different way, and that's where, like, even just the act of seeing
The
somebody
act
that
of
no one
seeing.
would have seen.
Yes. How do I bring that into my life down from, okay, we were talking about how deep this subject is, and it is intellectual,
Mhm.
and I'm academic, maybe is the right, more preferred word. So how do I see? How do I see as a modern day follower of Jesus? How do I see like Jesus saw? Like what was in that vision? What did he have that I can
So,
have?
well, I think a lot of it starts even in church and in community.
It
So
does.
whenever Jesus goes to a party, if you will, like to use
Yes.
a
Hmm.
who
He
does he
did
talk
go to
to?
parties. Yes.
Exactly. But he always gravitates to the people that no one else talks to.
Oh, yes. And in a sense, people, we might frame it this way, that can't do anything for him,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
We might, there's terms for it, suck up,
Mhm.
all those things,
Yeah.
go to people that will bring us an advantage,
Yes. And
further
that's
our
the
career
question.
or, yeah.
Yeah, like how do we
Mm.
do this in church and in our community? And that's where interacting with people in need is so is still so revolutionary because they
Yeah,
can't do anything for you. But ultimately
right.
also even staying at home with your kids. Like can my kids do anything for me? I mean, I think they're really lovable. They do make me happy. But the
I'm so
point
glad.
is like there's no prestige associated with like
Which is the biggest pound the table. And
yeah.
that is a rudimentary part of your work here,
Mhm.
is to restore the value of motherhood,
Oh
which
yeah.
I think I'm doing, but you're calling me to really think broader.
Mhm.
And I love that. Why do we need to restore the dignity and the value of a mother staying home? Why? What are the ramifications? You have so many
Mhm.
ramifications in this book, the cost of these
Mhm.
actions in, pre-Christian Mediterranean world. I mean, you give us the ramifications. So
Mhm.
you have immersed yourself in this for years, I'm sure. What are the ramifications if we don't restore
Yeah.
this
Mhm.
incredible, I haven't even known what to call it, office calling, position, stature of motherhood?
It's a symptom of how we
Hmm.
look at people more generally. So the way we look at mothers and children and really the vulnerable, um,
Yeah.
it it reflects how we look at people in general. So if you're willing to look at anyone and say, you are useless or you are unlovely, what are you thinking about the rest of God's creations? God's
Yeah.
priceless, beautiful children.
It's a
Like
harsh
that's,
category. Hmm.
yeah, it is, but that's what it is.
Hmm.
Our anthropology is on the line, like how we think of other people, because our anthropology is informed by our theology, how we think of God and
I
how
love
we think of
this.
God's interactions with us. And that's
Hmm.
really what it comes down to. How you treat other people reflects your view of God.
Oh, say that again, because that is a vital part of this conversation. So please say that again.
Of course, yeah. How you treat other people reflects your view of God. Or if you want the 50-cent words, your anthropology and your theology are deeply connected.
Oh, I've never heard that said. That is so good. And I have to take that and really sit with it. I love that. Here's what you write. Can I read this real quick? I
Of
love
course.
what you said about Bloomberg's article, and I wanted to get it in here. The veracity or falsehood of the Bloomberg article's arguments, however, is less important than the mere fact of its existence and subsequent popularity. The very attempt in this work to propose the argument that it makes, to do it so boldly, like you just said, is a symptom of a pervasive problem in American society, the problem of devaluing motherhood and children in every sphere of modern life. That is the problem that this is why you wrote
Mhm.
this book, seek to confront in all its ugliness in this present book, with the conviction that it is impossible to address a problem whose existence and full repercussions in our world and our own lives we do not recognize or acknowledge openly. And it is a problem that is symptomatic of a larger devaluing of human life in our society more generally. Okay, so bring this into my practical living life like you're
Mhm.
doing so beautifully. Thank you so much. That I first need to examine how I see the people in my life and in my community, my neighborhood. I mean, isn't it love your neighbor as you love yourself?
It is. But
Isn't
it's also love you, like in a way that Jesus would say it. Like if
okay.
you don't if
Tell
you
me
don't
more.
think, well, if you absorb what somebody else says, if somebody else says you are unlovely or that's not what Jesus says about mothers, children, or any human being.
Yeah, it is not. Mm-mm.
He keeps saying, like, I love you.
Yes, he does. He does. Would you okay, hold on 1 minute. I've got to get my notes. Okay. Told you there's so many things and wanted to be clear. You talk about the devaluing of children is inextricably connected, and you use a word that just jumped off the page, to
Mm,
the disdain our society conveys for the work of mothers, from the
mhm.
process of pregnancy to the work and resources expended on child rearing and education. In other words, our society has a built in disdain for motherhood as a concept. Why is that, Nadia?
Again, it goes back to that GDP.
Okay.
If what you're doing does not generate open revenue, then for a lot of people looking from outside in, it just seems kind of senseless and worthless.
Hmm.
And it is kind of ironic because any of us could be doing the same work outside the home and getting paid for it, and suddenly would be
Yes.
lauded. Like
Like a
if you are
daycare
teaching,
or
yeah, if you're
teaching.
teaching somebody else's children, like that's great. You're supporting the
Yes.
economy. If you're teaching your own children, that's bad. You're not supporting the economy.
Oh my
Um,
goodness. I homeschooled when that was really, really
mhm.
disdained. You know, what are you
Yeah.
doing back in the day? I'm
Mhm,
not that old, but I'm
mhm,
old enough to know that I
mhm,
was a little bit of a pioneer in my
mhm.
community, you know, one of the pioneers for bringing my children home and totally devalued for sure. So, yes. So it is a matter of economics for sure. And if you're, I like to hold things in two hands here. So if society, culture, and it's been here like you're telling us for
Mhm.
centuries and centuries, millennia, right? So how then, all right, I'm just trying to bring this down. I, Janelle, you, Nadia, have to just know inside of ourselves in our inherent intrinsic value, worth, and dignity that the work I'm doing at home with my children is God's work.
Yes. The
And then,
Gospels affirm it over and over and over. And I mean,
mhm,
this is where for Christians, like we talk about all the like general benefits of being immersed in scripture daily and all of that. Like, well, here's one. Like you really do see this
mhm,
over and over.
yeah,
Nothing that you're doing is unseen. God can see it. God cares. God values it. But
mhm,
also, this is the work for pastors, like not to put yet more responsibility on pastors. This
correct.
is something that they should acknowledge.
Yeah, it's a
And I
culture,
think,
right?
yeah, this is where the
And not
church
just
can
to
do
have a
something.
MOPS group or a mother's
No,
group, right? I
no.
know. Will you talk
Hmm.
about that? Like having that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I can see you
No, go
have.
ahead. Yeah.
No, 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 you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. But this is where creating that culture that pushes back against the prevalent societal wisdom. You know, the
Mhm.
best answer to Bloomberg can be found on Sunday in a good church.
In a good, healthy church that
Exactly.
values the
Yeah.
unseen, right?
Yeah,
That
because
sees
you
every
are seen.
person. Hmm.
Exactly. And that's what it is.
Hmm.
That's the whole kind of the invitation, like come to Christ with all of your messiness and woundedness and
Hmm.
sleep deprivation from the night before, where your baby just like would not sleep. And then you can pass that baby to
A
a
nursery
loving
worker.
friend. And exactly like, well, and the nursery workers in our church are like people like me who are in the
Yes,
rotation, who will
that's right.
happily take your baby and rock your baby, you know,
Yes.
like 1 week every like,
Six
couple of
weeks.
months.
Right.
Yeah,
I love it.
exactly. Like whatever the rotation is. And it's just the most beautiful thing ever because it's a gift for
Mm.
me. Like now that my youngest is 6, to
Yes.
like breathe in
A
that
little
smell
baby.
of,
Yeah.
I know. It's
I love your
but
joy. Your joy is
that's
just effervescent. It's
but that's
lovely.
what we have, but that's what we're looking for. That is
Hmm.
what healthy church and healthy relationship with Christ does, because that's what he
Yeah.
came to give us. He came to give us joy in
Mhm.
these things that otherwise the world says are worthless.
Yeah, so I feel, do you ever feel as though you are a lone voice, though? Like this book to me is earth
Mhm,
shattering, life shattering. And yes, it's speaking to church culture for
mhm,
sure, to
mhm.
church leadership, to the community of faith, all faith, you know, that's what's speaking to me about it. So do you feel like a lone voice at times? Or,
Not so much anymore. I think
okay.
part of it is there have been several other books, like
Mhm.
right around this time, that address different pieces of this. So
Yeah.
even like Tim Carney's Family Unfriendly, for instance,
Hmm.
or Catherine Pakaluk's book on women who had more than 5 or more kids, like looking at like what separates those
Right.
families from everybody else, like what, and it is a lot of times like just the joy of parenting, joy of having kids.
Yes. Yes. Well, back
So
in
I
my day,
really,
I will say this. I'm going to
yeah.
say it because back in my day, in the early years of homeschooling in the States, for sure, there were books like Full Quiver
Mm,
and Don't Stop at Two, Don't Stop at Three. And so there was this, what do you call it? Pedestal.
mhm,
There was this ooh, heavy weight almost of stopping at 3 or stopping at 4. Like it was the godly thing to do to have many, many children. I mean, just so many skewed messages. But
But what's so interesting, like the more recent books, and my book, I've seen people like say my book is very much like a pro big family book, which I think is
ah,
hilarious because
interesting. I didn't get that.
but
Okay.
Um, and it's fine. I take it as a compliment. But the point is, like, the messaging now is different. So you're talking about like the full
Full
quiver
quiver.
movement, and like don't stop at two or something. And that's not the messaging right now. What we're saying is pursue human flourishing in your family, like
Mm-hmm.
love your kids and feel loved the way God like wants to love you.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Rejoice in the life that you have. Like it's not saying
Hmm.
you must have X number of kids before you're happy, or God requires you to have X number of kids. It's really
Correct.
saying, how can you flourish in this world the way
Hmm.
God has called you to?
And I think I understand human flourishing. I've written about it, I've studied it,
Mhm.
positive psychology, all of those things.
Mm.
Can you explain for my Heartlift community, what does that mean? What does human flourishing mean?
It's a great question, and perhaps my definition is going to be a little bit different from yours as like a
Yeah.
professional mental health
Hmm.
um, expert. But I think of Wendell Berry.
Hmm.
So the
Look,
the
I have it
notion
right
of
here. Was my next
yeah.
question.
So all of Wendell Berry's writing has been in pursuit of human flourishing.
Yes.
How do we empower people to thrive in their communities? And a lot of times it requires not just the love of God, but also just the love of family, the love of other
Mhm.
people, the love
Yeah.
of place,
Yeah.
finding roots,
Hmm.
which is really difficult. And by the way, for academics, like everything about academia is against roots because you don't choose where you live and things
Oh,
like that.
okay.
You,
I don't
I mean,
understand that. Tell me.
well, so in academia, the way the job market was, you apply for whatever job there is the year that you
Mhm.
graduate with your PhD. And if you get a job, you say, yes, thank you. I will move to Fairbanks, Alaska. Or,
Yes.
like just,
Yes.
or
Yes.
middle of nowhere in Washington state, like that's totally
Correct.
fine. Like I've never been there, but like if you offer me a job, like you will take it.
You take what you
Um,
get.
you
Yes.
take what you get, which is fine. And all of
Hmm.
those places are lovely. But
Hmm.
the point is, there is no concept of you have generations of people who come from here. So
Hmm. Right.
after I walked away from academia, my husband got a job in Ashland, Ohio, which is where we live now, and we love it. But
Oh,
so many people in our church, we love our church,
I'm
man.
so happy to
God's
hear that. That's a
God's people
gift.
are man,
Nadia,
and
you know
God's
what a gift that is.
it is a gift,
It
but
is.
God's people are just the best. But
They are.
so many people in our church, and that's kind of been our my joke. After I caught on pretty quickly, it's been my joke. Like whenever I meet anyone new here in church or in town, it's like, so who else are you related to? Because I know if I ask this question, it will save me embarrassment later when it turns out that they're like the second cousin once
Yes.
removed from like somebody else that I had lunch with like three
That's so
days
funny.
ago. It's
Yes.
people,
It's
everybody
small
knows
town.
everybody.
Hmm.
Yes. If my children throw a fit in the grocery store, chances are somebody will talk to them about it
I love it.
2 days later. No,
Yes.
it's not.
I get it.
And
I
it's going to be
understand what you're
sweet.
saying.
But that's the thing. It's that rootedness. So for some
Mm.
people in my church, like they live on a family farm that goes back
Yes.
200 years.
It's unbelievable. It
It is
really is.
unbelievable, but
What
it's
have you
roots.
gleaned from that? Like, that seems to be a really present testing to what you're writing about, in a sense.
Yeah. And so Barry, in talking about human flourishing, has connected to place in
Mm,
addition. So it's like the love of people is always connected to the love of place,
it really
is very
is.
much against the modern corporate and academic world. And I'd say like the corporate world is just as bad as academia
Mhm.
because every promotion comes with another place.
Yeah, that could be
The whole
military
idea.
as well,
Oh,
like
yeah,
as you're seeing with your
absolutely.
son, for sure. Yep.
Yeah.
I grew up in a
So,
military
like, all
family.
of those
Mhm.
so there you go. Like,
Mhm.
you don't even know what country you'll end up in, not
I'm
just,
not
like,
sure I
state.
know how to root, put it that way.
Yeah.
I've had to work hard on
Ooh.
staying in one place and seeing the
Mm.
value of
Mhm.
being well rooted in one place. I have had to do that
See,
for sure. Yeah. So I
that's a
think that's
challenge.
It is a very big challenge. Let me read
but
what
it's
you write. Oh,
essential.
go ahead. Well,
Go ahead. Yeah.
I want to read what you write from Barry. Hold on, let me find him again. Wendell Berry. Here he is. More recently, over his prolific writing career spanning 6 decades and counting, Wendell Berry has also considered similar questions in connection to local culture and agriculture. Human dignity and worth for Berry are under extreme threat in our industrialized and viciously and unnaturally industrialized world. I guess this is just the huge investment I'm hoping that you make into my life and everyone that's listening is what can I do? What can we do? Is it as simple as just see others as Jesus sees others, and then on the other hand, see mothering as so valuable? Yet you do talk about because you are not just a mother. Let's just throw that just word out because people will say, "Oh, you're just a mother," right? But you're more than a mother. Or is it just mothering? Like I think what I'm studying is the whole concept of mothering,
Hmm.
like what the world needs now is mothering.
Hmm.
I think that's what's absent. Is that
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. Uh,
okay?
and everything that we do is connected. So much of the way the contemporary world sees work
Yeah.
and whatever happens at home is separate spheres. Like, let's pretend that you're only a worker between these hours
Yeah.
and you don't do anything else. But the whole point is like, we are whole persons. And deep
Yeah.
inside, we know this. Like, your
Mhm.
soul, your mind, your body, like all of these things are intertwined. And
Yes.
so, like everything that I do, my work as a writer and an editor cannot be separated from my work of mothering. I'm
Yes.
so much better at what I do in other spheres precisely because I am a mother to my children and
Why?
because
Why do you
I
say
like
that? Why do you I want nuts and bolts here. Why do you say that?
I'm not very good at nuts and bolts.
I
I can tell
know. It's
stories.
okay.
You're putting me on the spot.
Well,
No,
then tell
okay.
me a story.
Okay. So the way even like the practice of seeing people, right?
Yeah.
So how do we do that? Part of
Mhm.
it starts with the school of marriage and parenting. The
Ah,
reason I can see, like, I'm learning, I'm not perfect at this. None of us
no.
are on this
No.
side of like heaven. But
Mm-mm.
the reason I'm learning to do this is because I have children who, when they cry, little kids, especially with their needs, you cannot not see a crying child.
Well, you can,
Well, I guess, but it would take some
but
real effort and it would
it
be very dysfunctional.
it would be dysfunctional. Correct.
Yeah,
But
that's,
you're inciting us, inviting us to really see.
yeah,
Okay. All right. So
really see.
really see.
But that's the kind of seeing that we need to train ourselves to use also in interacting with other people.
Hmm.
Just because adults don't cry about every need doesn't
Yes.
mean that adults we know in our lives are not going through something.
They don't
And
carry big
that's
feelings, right? Like your little
exactly,
one, your little girl, right?
yeah.
I'm Carrie. I
They might
have,
not tell you. They
I
might not
have.
tell you that,
That's right.
but they carry it. And that's what
Yeah.
Jesus was so good at doing.
Hmm.
So Jesus's pro-life ministry was seeing people, seeing those feelings like down to the core
Hmm. And listening.
and listening.
And that enlarges you as a human being. I think that gives the
Yeah.
work that you're doing inside of your home adds
Hmm.
such value to your personhood. That's how I saw it. It was like
Absolutely.
having my children at home, being a mother for me, continuing because they're all adults now, and
Hmm.
is an expansive work. I am always having to learn. I'm always having to listen and grow and
Hmm.
evolve. And so I think that, you're not saying to us, okay, you have to stay home, be a stay at home mom and then neglect your intellect
Hmm.
or neglect. You're not doing that. You're not
No,
proposing that. You're not purporting that. You're telling us to become whole, to be the holistic
exactly.
view, right? Of
Hmm.
of being to me, and I think you're defending that as well, that I don't think there's anything more important in the world than a healthy mother, emotionally, mentally, relationally,
Yeah.
spiritually, because it is our future. And so that comes back
Yeah.
down, I guess, to close here. This is so hard to close because it's such an important topic, is to really understand the ramifications of a society that doesn't value that.
And I was thinking back to Bloomberg, and I guess we can
Yeah.
conclude with that article
Okay.
that started
Yeah.
me down the path to this
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
What would a world look like if more women followed the advice of that article?
Oh.
It would be a very sterile, isolated, lonely world that encourages selfishness, because that's what it is. That article is a call to selfishness. Just do what you
Mm-hmm.
want to do, ignore everybody else, and you will
Mm-hmm.
be happy.
Yeah, that's true. And I can
What a
think of
horrible, horrible
historical
message.
periods and historical leaders that did
Hmm.
that. And you have
Yeah.
given us many stories in this book.
Hmm.
Okay, so what is our final thought, Nadia? While I have you here, your beautiful thoughts to encourage those moms that perhaps are where you were or are at home feeling devalued. Just a word to them.
God called you to this, and it's so beautiful. You are lovely, and the work you're doing is priceless.
Mm, thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Okay. I'm going to end it there, but I want to ask you
Yeah,
a question.
sure.
I'm not going to hit unrecord, stop recording yet.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm so curious. What nationality are you?
I was born in Russia and grew up in Israel. My family moved to the US when I was in high school.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I guess the
Okay.
accent. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like trying to go, what accent is that? My whole family's
Yeah.
Czech on that side. I'm like,
Okay. Yeah.
not
All
that,
right.
so Russian. Okay, that makes sense. And then Israel. And how did you come to follow Christ at age 30?
It was just kind of that personal crisis, like right as I was on track to tenure and all that, and just
A
my
lot
personal
going
life was
on.
falling apart. Yeah. Just
Did someone
realizing
just
like
come
this is
into your life and see you and share the story, or did you search on your own?
There was a little bit of both. I was
Okay.
searching already, and somebody was willing to loan a bunch of books.
I love it. Which book might have had the best impact? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to know because I read so much, I just kind of
Well,
like all over.
you're a
Yeah,
reader.
I mean the academic approach to
Yeah.
figuring things out, but
Yeah.
ultimately reading through the Gospels.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay. I love that
yeah.
so much. Okay, I'll stop. Oh, thanks for listening today, Heartlifters. Wow. I'm really deeply emotional right now at re-listening my conversation with Nadia. Her words are piercing, convicting, challenging, promising, and most of all, hopeful. The very end of her book, she writes, "To promote a culture of life means deliberately finding the countercultural joy in family, in children, in friendships, in meaningful work, and in redeeming our time to the glory of God in a decidedly utilitarian world that questions all things that do not lead to profit." Profit. "Tell me a story," my 8-year-old son still asks my husband every morning by way of greeting. He began making this request years ago, before he could read. Now, although he reads for himself, he still wants to hear stories from his father. The stories we tell, write, and live out every day are not perfect, but they can be good, beautiful, and meaningful. But most of all, what these stories tell my son at the beginning of each day is that his life matters, that he is dear to us, that he is significant enough for his father to begin his day with a renewal of relationship. Wow. I'm deeply, deeply convicted and exhorted by Nadia's words to us. Please meet me at Heartlift Central on Substack or on Instagram at Janelle Reardon. Your thoughts enlarge my life. And remember, you have value worth and dignity.